name is Davina Ware with The Complete Leader, and we're here with another episode of Ask a Coach. This is where you, the community, ask burning questions about career, work environment, and leadership from our expert faculty. Today, we have with us Padraig, which is the CEO of TTI Success Insights in Ireland. He also coaches entrepreneurs and people building companies. Thank you for being with us today.
Very happy to be here, Davina. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive right in. We have a question from our community that we'll have you answer today. And that is, as a leader, I'm very serious about ensuring that my team has what they need to be successful. This is both personally and professionally. The problem is I often neglect myself. By the time I think about my needs, I'm too tired. Or there's a need that one of my team members has that's more urgent. How do I prioritize my needs as a leader without feeling like I'm neglecting my team?
Okay, that's a big question, a good question. And in fact, interesting that in the introduction, you mentioned that I coach entrepreneurs and people growing companies. And that's a question they often face, believe it or not. Because in growth companies, a lot of leaders, you find that in early stage companies particularly, they are all hands on deck. So everybody's rolled up their sleeves. Roles aren't always clear. And the leader sort of leads from the front, i.e., he has to be there at 2 a.m. eating the pizza like everybody else to keep the team motivated. And sometimes, for example, the team members, they go home and they sleep it in, but he has to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning for the second team. So often the leader can, in fact, burn out doing this. And by burnout, I mean lose their mojo, lose that sense of energy, that sense of passion. They're still interested, they still love what they're doing, but somehow or other, they just can't generate energy for it. So I think that it's really, really important that they take care of themselves. Anybody I don't know, Davina, if you work out in the gym or if you run or anything, but good. Anybody who does knows that when you want to build a muscle or build any sort of strength, it's resting. It's when you rest that you build the muscle. So you stress the muscle, you strain the muscle, the lungs, so whatever it is, and then you rest. And in that recovery period, the muscle comes back and is built stronger. The exact same, I think, is true in leadership and in business in general. Let me just share a thought with you. I remember a long, long time ago when I first started out in business, and I took over this company. I bought a company, and shortly after I bought, I fired one of the key executives. And the person who sold the company to me, he said to me, "You're a very ruthless man. You're hardly in the door and you fired this person." And when he'd finished berating me, I said, "Now you need to listen to me very, very carefully." I said, "I'm rigorous. You were ruthless. So you left this person in place for an extended period of time when they were failing demonstrably, wasting their time in their career, damaging the team and damaging the business." I said, "I, on the other hand, faced up to reality, and I told this person to go away and find a job where they'd be successful, and I would support them in that transition." Rigorous versus ruthless. I think the exact same applies in terms of the leader taking care of themselves. It is ruthless to drive yourself into the ground. It is ruthless to think that you have to constantly go and take care of everybody's needs. To be rigorous, to build that muscle, you must rest. You must take care of yourself. You must step back. I think this is really, really important. Now, when I coach clients, these entrepreneurial type of people who are usually a certain kind of behavioral profile, certain kind of driving forces, we know what they look like. You know, the DISC, commanding, intention, resourceful, objective. These kind of people, when we work with them, they are driven. They are driven, and they have to learn this. So I sort of give them lots of advice on this. And this is a big area for me. I talk about this thing of high performance mindset, and that it's not at all what they think. that it's really about things like taking care of your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual health, taking time for self-care. So, for example, a consistent sleep pattern doesn't have to be early to bed, early to rise, although it is for me, but it has to be consistent 7 days a week, exercising regularly, stretching, weights, cardiovascular, so on, maintaining a healthy diet, things like intermittent fasting, avoiding carbs and sugar, and so on. Developing a strong network, building a strong network around themselves, identifying practices as an interest. For me, it's a motorbike and it's running and so on, but things that give them space, that take them away. Finding a sense of purpose, having a very clear sense of purpose around their life, not just around the business. So things like this to take care of themselves is really, really important. And I think they really have to ask themselves how they generate energy. Like, what generates energy? So having balance in their lives. What can they do each day, each week, each quarter to keep their brain and their body fit and well? I think they also have to, when they have deadlines and they're under pressure, as this person appears to be in that question, when they're stressed like that, they have to think about how do they maintain or protect their well-being, and they need to be careful about that. And so I think these are my initial thoughts, I think, around in answer to that question. You have to do it, and you have to explain to the team that they need to do it. One company I work with, for example, really interesting company in the States, a way leader, and they're into this area of automated parking, and really, really, really interesting company. And they're very, very passionate about this thing. You have to take time off. You don't want to see people working every hour of every day. So you have to say to your team, I have needs, so have you. We all have needs. Or else we're going to burn out. We need to take time out. We work hard, but we need to play hard. And by play hard, I don't mean partying all night. I mean recovering. We need to be mindful, and we need to practice self-awareness, take control of our thoughts, the way we explain things, all these kind of good things that we need to, watching our attitude, building success habits, setting smart goals, understanding our deliverables. One of the things I think is really important as well with the team is for a leader in this kind of environment, recognizing that there's a certain arrogance in thinking that you're responsible for each team member. None of us are God. All these people are adults. They know what they're doing. They're making their own decisions. So we have to sort of step back and say, hold on, these people are adults. So hold ourselves accountable for sure. Hold them accountable as well. So the idea of peer review is very clear deliverables, peer review processes, accountability processes allow us to hold each other accountable. So that we're not feeling this pressure of I have to be taking care of people all the time, getting people to step up to plate and be accountable. So I think these are like the broad thrusts, I think, of the things that I would say to them. In terms of being a team player, when you listen to that question, you get the sense of the person saying, my people, my people. And I don't think that's really what being a team player is about. This rigorous versus ruthless, I think, is just a good terminology to think about. For sure, you have to improve your communications. For sure, you have to have accountability. For sure, you have to learn to work more effectively together. And for sure, you have to build a deep commitment amongst yourself and the other team members, and build trust, and say, how do we build trust and confidence? And then I think you get to a point where you can say, how can I be vulnerable? How can I say to my team, listen, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, or I can't deal with all your issues. You have to be authentic. And I think if you try to be the Buddha on skates, it's not going to work. I think you have to be authentic, and you have to say to people, I need space, or I need more support. There is an illusion, particularly around younger leaders, and maybe not so. Actually, let me rephrase that. In my day, there was an illusion among younger leaders. I think younger leaders today actually are a lot smarter than we were, a lot more in tune. But there was an illusion that you had to have all the answers. I think it's really, really important for leaders today in that kind of environment where they feel this pressure to take care of the team and to care of the team's needs as opposed to their own needs. I think They have to be able to say, I don't have all the answers. I don't know how to do this. And you have to take responsibility. Get back to the idea of accountability. You have to take responsibility. You have to move this forward. So I think I like also the idea, when I talk about rigorous versus ruthless, I like this idea of goal achievement. I mean, Ron Price talks a lot about not goal setting. He's not a great fan of this idea of goal setting. He's much more interested in goal achievement. And we often talk about goal setting being a key leadership competency. It's really goal achievement that's a key leadership competency. And I think if you establish this kind of framework with your team and be very honest and rigorous with them in terms of what they have to deliver, what the deliverables are, what accountability looks like, peer reviews, goal achievement, and you hold them accountable, that creates space for you to step back. And the last comment I think I'd make on this is the best advice I've ever given to that was ever given to me, and I've ever given, I think, to leaders, is to create space. I remember I met I used to work with a very influential man, Chuck Feeney, and really quite remarkable. I think the world's greatest philanthropist, quite a remarkable man. And I met a lot of influential people, famous people, successful businessmen, very, very high level successful businessmen, world leaders, if you wish, when I was involved with them. And two things actually struck me about all of them. The first thing is they had humility. They didn't pretend they'd any answers. They were always asking questions. They always wanted to learn. They were humble, and they were very authentic. I'm going to bed now. I'm tired, and they went to bed. Or, And the second thing that always struck me about them was they had space. They pushed things away from themselves, and they created space, i.e., time. Like space-time continuum, there were no black holes sucking them in. So they created space and time that allowed them, in fact, to reflect, allowed them to step back. Somebody in the situation of our, the person who asked that question, somebody in that situation typically does not have space. They do not have time. They are overwhelmed. And you must push things out. You must delegate and force people to take accountability and responsibility. Create space and time for yourself to allow yourself to actually step back, to reflect, to think, which is the most important thing that you can do. And so often my clients get a surprise when they ask me, they say, oh my God, what do I do next, Padraig? I say, well, why don't you take a long weekend? And they say, what? We're overwhelmed. I say, yeah. And I'll tell you my last little story. And it will be the end of my answer to that question. There's a great story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I like the story, so I tell it a lot, about Martin Luther. Martin Luther is called one of the great leaders of the Reformation. And Martin Luther was in his chapel praying one day, and his secretary was pacing up and down outside the chapel, waiting for Martin Luther to come out. And eventually, after an hour, Martin Luther came out of his chapel, and his secretary said, oh, thanks be to God, he said, at last, I thought you'd never come out. Look at the list of all the things we have to deal with today. And Martin Luther said, in that case, I need another half hour. And he went back in and closed the door. I think that sort of sums up what I'm really trying to say here.
That is excellent. And I think gives the audience a lot to think about in terms of how they deal with their team, but most importantly, how they deal with themselves. So excellent answer. This was great information. And I'm sure the person who submitted this question can directly apply your feedback. So thank you for being with us today. I think so. And that wraps it up for this episode of Ask a Coach.